Hello learners, my name is Madhulika Kaushik and I've been teaching marketing for the last 40 years. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to share with you some inputs on brand and branding. The first question that we have is, what is a brand? So what are the learning outcomes we are looking at the end of this session? Once you've gone through this session, I expect that you should be able to explain the term brand. What constitutes a brand, what are the different elements in a brand, and also what role does a brand really play for various parties like consumers, channel members and manufacturers. You should also be able to distinguish between the terms like product and brand, an individual brand versus a family brand, the terms like brand value and brand salience and so on. So this is just a primer for the issue of brand and branding, and let's begin. I would like to begin this by a small fun exercise for you. Just think about the brands that you have been using and what is the first thing that comes to your mind when we talk about some of these associations. We'll take that later, but let us first look at what are the most valuable brands in the world. So I've taken the international brands or the global brands as well as the Indian brands. If you talk about the global brands, there's a Forbes list that comes out every year, and I've given you the links at the bottom of the slide for both the kind of listings that are there. Now Forbes has been producing these lists for quite some time now. The 2020 list, which talks about the most valuable brand, and these valuable brands are in terms of brand value monetized, and therefore the most valuable brands, as you see on your screen, are Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, etc. These are brands that we've been using for a long time and we are all very familiar with these brands. But these have, if you look at the past 4 to 5 years lists, they just go, I mean there's just a reshuffling of these names and the names are always there. What does that tell you? That tells you that these brands, in terms of their marketing strategy, must be doing something really meaningful to the consumer so that the consumers keep on bringing their customer or buying these brands over and over again and have a high degree of brand salience for these brands. If you look at the Indian situation, again the body that does this study, the link has been given at the bottom. So by brand value, which are the most valuable brands, and again these are brands that you are all very familiar with, the HDFC, the Life Insurance Corporation, the TCS, Airtel, SBI, Kotak Mahindra Bank Limited, all of these are brands that we've virtually grown up with and you must all be very, very familiar. Now the concept of brand value is, what is the value add that the act of branding brings to the manufacturer in terms of returns to them about related to the investment that has been done in the brand and branding process. So what is a brand? If you wanted to define what a brand is, brands are, it could be a name, it could be a logo, it could be a trademark, a patent or a package design, or all of these together, and these are created to bring in the benefit of clear identification and differentiation of a given market offering. So a bottle of water versus a bottle of water that carries a brand name, that brand name enables, that brand name would have a certain name. There could be a certain logo to distinguish that name from any other name. It could be a specific coloring that is used, a certain way of lettering is written and so on. And sometimes these names are actually patented or names are actually copyrighted so that it is capable of creating an intellectual property for the person who created that brand. Therefore, branding is actually a way of creating your own identity in the market separate from that of your competitors. So how would the consumer identify that if he's bought a particular product and liked it, if he wants to buy it again, how would he recall, how would he identify and select that brand? So in order to ease the life of consumers in their decision making, in order to give the benefit of differentiation and competitive advantage to manufacturers, the act of branding has gone on. Now Some of you may be wondering as to when and how this act of branding start and where did the term brand come from. Interesting history. At the time where people used to raise cattle and rear them for a living, so in ranches and farms where cattle were raised, the cattle would often get mixed with a neighboring farm or would sometimes be stolen, and it was very difficult for people to move cases. So they started the act of using a hot iron and actually stamping it on a body part of the cattle, and therefore this was actually called branding. It was a sort of a painful process, but it stayed. So it singed the skin and the hair and so on, but it was a permanent way of identifying your own cattle from others, so cows, horses and so on. So this is where the entire activity started, but then it came to be utilized for products and services and so on. So that's the history of branding. Now when you are creating your own brand, as we said just now, that a brand could be a distinctive name, a logo, a trademark, a patent and so on. So what are the decisions that are involved? The first decision that is involved is, should you carry the manufacturer's name? I mean, there are companies who believe that if there is a good corporate identity and you want to take the advantage of that corporate identity, you should use the manufacturer's name as part of the brand name. Others may have different rationale for not using the manufacturer's name, and we'll be talking about manufacturers' brands and so on in the later part of this presentation. The second decision that you have to take is, do you have one single name that you put on every component of the product line that you have, or should you have individual names? Different companies use different strategies. Apple, for example, uses a family brand name. Godrej, our own conglomerate, uses the term Godrej, and all their products carry the name Godrej and then the sub name of that particular product item. Individual names, Procter & Gamble, for example, for the entire line of products, thinks of different names for their various whole range of products. So companies have their own rationale, and we'll be talking about some of them as we go on. And other choices that you have to make is, what is the choice of name? What kind of logo? Should I have a large logo? What kind of coloring? How do I design that logo? And there are huge competitions that are held within the company, outside consultants hired to give a certain design and so on. Color, what are the values that you want to associate with the brand, and what are the kind of associations that you want to keep. Now we just said a brand is a way of differentiating your product from others, your own offering from other offerings within your own stable and from your competitors' stable. But what is the basis of differentiation you would like to choose? Is it taste, color, size, effectiveness, some kind of a usage quality and so on and so forth. So you need to take that decision before you decide upon the brand name, and this is the brand that I am going to use, because the basis of differentiation somehow has to be reflected in the brand name. The brand name can be evocative of that differentiation. Half your battle of communicating your differentiation is already won. Now we've been talking about what a brand is, and we've just generally said that it's a way of distinguishing your product offering from your competitors. But what does a brand really accomplish? What does it get for you? Because you must have realized from the discussion that we've had so far that there is a significant investment that goes in building a brand, creating a name, communicating that brand idea and so on. How does a brand really accomplish the values that accomplish the benefits that we associate with the act of branding, or the outcomes we are looking for when we are putting in this investment? We will look at it from different perspectives. What does a brand accomplish for the consumers? What does it accomplish for the manufacturers and for the middlemen, that is intermediaries? For the consumers, the brand enables a clear manufacturer identification and the accountability. So if I know something that is coming out of the house of Tatas, would be, I mean, the trust that people put in that brand, you have a certain clear idea that a product would be, if it is coming from that house, would be having a certain level of acceptable quality. Also, It enables the consumer to hold the manufacturer accountable because it's very clearly associated with a particular manufacturer's name. A brand for the consumer also enables the consumers to set their expectation. What can I expect? So, if I am buying a value for money brand, I know very clearly that it would have a certain usage expectation, but it would not be the top end brand, and therefore I cannot really expect a lot of luxury add-ons onto the brand. Again, if I am buying a very top end brand, let us say you are buying a piece of suitings which is from a brand which is a high end brand, then you would expect the benefits of exclusivity of a certain quality and so on. So, a brand and the associations that go with a brand allow consumers to set their expectations and therefore enable them to have a certain kind of purchase assessment or post purchase assessment as a result of this brand buying. Branding also enables you to manage risk in your buying, because there are hundreds of brands, and when you start using some and you have some experiences, or when you hear others talking about their brand buying experiences, you can actually then therefore assess the risk that you are going in when you are buying a brand, a completely unknown brand versus a slightly known brand or brand that has been there for some time. You have ways of assessing what is my risk in buying. Branding again allows you to validate your experiences. The first thing we talked about was setting expectations. So, once you have had certain expectations and you put the brand in use, you can then measure at the end of the purchase exercise or usage exercise whether your expectations have been met or met partially or fully met, or have you been delighted in the sense that they have been more than met, the brand exceeded your expectations. So, you are able to validate your own experience and your own perception when you initially bought the brand to the time when you actually use the brand. So, all of this validation allows consumers to build in their own internal fund of information about various brands and use them as guide in further buying. Therefore, your risk progressively goes down when you have series of brand buying experiences. Again, because brands try to create a certain image and they also try to create very consciously certain associations with the brand. Now, when these associations are there, as you go further in your study of marketing, you would realize that consumers, when they are buying, they seek a consonance of their own personal image with the brand image. So, you build up a personal association. We said, this is me. You know, I am an iPhone person, or I am a Samsung person, I am an Android person versus a. So, what happens is that when there are conscious efforts by the manufacturers or brand creators to create a brand identity and a brand image, the consumers interact with that and derive their own meaning, and they over a period of time build their own personal association with the brand. For example, a brand of strong coffee and strong tea versus a person's own choices in buying. So, he then builds up an association, this is the coffee for me and that is the brand of tea for me, and so on. All your frequently used products like your sports shoes, so Nike versus Adidas versus whatever. So, this is, you may try a few brands and then you say this is the brand that works for me, and over a period of time you build up a personal association. That a branding exercise therefore allows you to say this is my preferred choice. Again, I just talked about association. Now, this association, when it's very clear, there is a brand personality that is created, and that brand personality allows you to identify yourself with certain brands as a consumer. So, again, that is a realization of what is it that you are looking for in consumption and allows you to ease your decision making. So, it also enables the consumers to simplify clutter. When you go, I mean, how many brands of toilet soap are available in India? Literally hundreds. Identification of certain brands that you have used or that are being advertised and making a selection allows you to simplify the clutter and helps you facilitate your decision making. Okay, we are at the same question, what does a brand really accomplish? And we are talking about the channel members now. For a channel member, an intermediary, a wholesaler or retailer who stocks the brand's to be distributed to the consumers. Branding as an exercise enables him to manage his assortment and also to calculate his risk, in the sense that there are certain brands which had a good market uptake. So, should I stock these, or when the rate of pickup was very fast, or the rate of pickup was slow, partly because the brand was new, what is the kind of effort that I have to make in order to get this brand to become popular among my target customers? Do I advise them? So, all of these kind of tasks that are associated and the kind of risk that would be there is eased out when you have clearly identified brand names and brand personality. Again, long term investment decisions by the channel members are also facilitated when you look at the brand growth trajectory and you are able to take decisions. Do I get into a long term contract with this supplier to have an exclusive dealership contract for this brand, or should I not go there? So, these get facilitated. And when you have brands and you can understand the value a brand is able to offer, you are also in a position of offering customer advice and you can give them informational support. For example, a new detergent has come into the market and consumers come and ask you as a supplier as to what is the feedback, how are people liking it. You can actually say that this has got a better shelf life or has got certain ingredients that can help you better. So, all of these things are accomplished because a brand and a certain value proposition for the brand is associated with that name. So, this is what branding does for the intermediaries. For the manufacturers, of course, these are the people who actually made investments in creation of the brand identity and so on. So, when you are putting in effort and putting in investment, putting in informational support to create a recognizable name and set your product apart from all other manufacturers, you would like to ensure that this act of branding enables identification, recognition and recall. So, when you associate these values and you keep on reinforcing these values through your marketing communication, you hope that the consumers will be able to recall your brand fast and so on. Again, he will be able to identify the brand by its distinctive packaging, distinctive logo. So, it is not an accident that the same standard colors are utilized for a bottle of Coke which is red versus a Pepsi which is blue. So, on the shelf itself, without really going near, you can recognize what this particular can is for. So, building what is called instant recognition, generating recall, and of course, identification of brand value with the brand name is something that it does for the manufacturer. So, it therefore enables this kinds of preference development and customer identification and customer involvement as you go on. Again, when you have once created a brand name and got it registered, you are able to have the benefit of legal protection and create an intellectual property right in case of individual brand names that you have created. Again, as brands grow and you associate certain qualities with the brand and continuously reinforce those, favorable associations get built, and you therefore, when you have done your market segmentation and you are looking at a certain customer seeking a certain value, those who seek the associated value with your own brand will naturally be attracted towards you. So, this benefit of favorable association and brand salience automatically comes to you. So, Genteel as a brand for woolen clothes which keeps your clothes soft, that association is consciously built, and therefore, when the consumers are looking for their expensive woolen clothes to be washed at home, automatically that brand association would benefit you. When you are wanting to, when you already have a certain product line and you are wanting to introduce another product line, if your brand is very well recognized, branding lowers the entry barriers for the new products. So, people are already familiar, there is a favorable recognition, a favorable association, people are looking forward, or people are actually favorably disposed towards buying this new product. When you have an established brand name and there is a lot of pull in the market for that particular brand, it enables you to have price premiums. You can actually charge more. Why does an iPhone always sell out even though the price is so much higher than other competing brands? People wait for the new model to be introduced and they're ready to pay price premiums because of the recognizable brand identity and a brand association they have with the technological sophistication and the best in innovation coming to you in a small package called an iPhone. So, when you have a recognized brand, it enables charging of price premium. Again, once you are able to develop a basis of good brand differentiation and are able to communicate that, this becomes a powerful basis for creating competitive advantage over your competitors. On a more basic operational level, branding enables in your own stock and warehouses, simplifies inventory and sorting and dealing with your own intermediaries, because you can use the brand to create your inventory processes and your ordering processes. What does a brand contain, or what are the different elements of a brand? The first thing is a brand identity. When you create a brand, you are creating a brand so that it can be used as a basis of identifying that offering from any other offering. Consciously, you seek to create a certain image of the brand, whether it's value for money, it's excellent economics in buying, or it's a luxury brand, or it's a family brand, or it's something that is a caring brand, it's an organic brand. So, all of these associations are created to set the brand apart from any other offering in that same category, and this surround then builds a certain imagery of the brand. Now, brand personality is a little more intangible. When you identify certain variables that you associate with the brand in terms of the market leader or the market follower, or when you are the market leader, what are Philips, for example, used to talk about innovation and new. Today it started talking about sense and sensibility, and how do you make, initially making lives better, then innovation and new, now sense and sensibility. So, there is sense in bringing the newest innovation to you, and how do we. So, ultimately the basic tagline of keeping life or making life continuously better, that theme is there, but you keep on associating these new innovative lines with the brand, so that over a period of time the consumer begins to recognize the brand as something that is in the forefront of bringing a new innovation to you, so long as that innovation is capable of making your life as a consumer better, and so on. Brand positioning is the art, is the act of creating a place in the consumer's mind. So, you are creating a image, creating a position in the mind space of the consumer. Please remember that mind space has other competitors as well, right, and the consumer's own past brand experiences and so on. So, what is it, where do you want to be, what do you want to be evaluated as, not in your terms, but in the terms of the consumer, and how does the consumer really see you? Brand equity, on the other hand, is the value that is a measure of the power of the brand at the retail level. So, what is it that all the above that you've talked about, brand identity, personality, positioning, imagery, have given to the brand, which is the value of the brand over and above the product benefit? What is the brand worth as a product, as a basic product, and what has been added on the basis of all the ingredients that have been added. So, brand equity is actually a financial construct. You can actually measure, and there are various kinds of models of measuring brand equity, and this is actually something that over a period of time becomes very valuable. I have the first slide that we were talking about in terms of most valuable brands are actually on the basis of brand value measured as brand equity. Brand experiences, what are the experiences that you are envisaging a person would have when he uses the brand, and what is the feedback from the customers. What are the different kind of experiences you are planning and what actually happens. Brand differentiation in terms of price, in terms of packaging, in terms of size, in terms of value, in terms of taste, odor, whatever. So, what is the basis of setting yourself apart that you have planned and that you are trying to communicate. So, brand differentiation is the criteria on which this brand stands apart from its competitors. Okay, what is brand communication? Having created all these values, you need to let your customer know that this is the brand with these set of differentiable values. Now, entire body of communication that is designed, this could be, and generally when we are looking at brand communication, we are looking at integrated marketing communication. Talking about the product in electronic media, print media, billboards, word of mouth, social media, all of that put together, and this does not happen by itself, it has to be planned. So, everything that you say or project about the brand using media of communication is known as brand communication, becomes a key ingredient in creating the brand identity. What is brand extension? Once you've created a particular brand and the brand is fairly well recognized and so on, and then you realize that there are certain segments of your consumer population that are not being covered by your existing product benefits. So, what you do is you add some other benefits and just extend this brand to cover that market. A very common example, Colgate. Colgate as a toothpaste used to talk about strong teeth, calcium, XYZ, prevention of bad breath and so on. Some years earlier, what happened was a completely herbal brand came into the market and disturbed the entire toothpaste market in India. Now, people started realizing that organic, herbal, Ayurvedic is something valuable, and therefore, people who want that kind of benefit, our brand is not able to cover that. So, what they did was, the Colgate name was there, they started another variant called Colgate Ved Shakti. So, you are talking about a herbal or an Ayurveda based product to cover that category of consumers who were Colgate customers, but had were looking at other options because they wanted to have the benefit of the natural, herbal, Ayurveda kind of a thing. Brand salience is the degree to which your brand is present in the consumer's consideration set when he is trying to buy something. So, when I am trying to buy a shampoo, what are the first 3 brands that come to my mind? The frequency with which your brand appears in those 3 is a measure of the brand salience. So, how would brand salience happen? If the consumers recognize the brand, if you have been talking about the brand, if there is a good marketing communication being done, if people have used the brand and found it good, it becomes part of your preferred brand set, and therefore, the objective of a marketer is to have his brand as a salient brand in as many of its customers as possible. And when you plan your marketing strategy, you look at salience objectives also. We will talk about it when we are looking at marketing strategy later on. Okay, again coming back to what are the different types of brands. I had in the very beginning talked about there are various levels at which branding can take place. The first level is the manufacturer brand, the person who is manufacturing a given product offering seeks to associate a certain name with his own brand. So, the most common brands that you have are manufacturer's brand, whether you take product categories like Everyday, Nestle, all these Amul, Mother Dairy are all manufacturers of a certain value and they put their own brand there. There are also situations where resellers, people who do not produce the product but are selling the product, put their own brand and try to sell those products. What happens is when you have large retailers, abroad when you have places, big retailers like Walmart and so on, they put their own brand after buying the products from unknown small manufacturers and putting their own brand. Now, aggregators like Amazon, for example, put their own brand on certain smaller manufacturers who do not have a great degree of countrywide recognition, but because Amazon and its sort of standardization of value is recognized, they agree to get this branding be carried. We have our own homegrown aggregator supplier called Grofers. So they sell other brands, but they also have their own brands, and they put their own brand on that. So these are brands that are also called private labels or reseller labels. I already referred to this family brand and individual brands earlier. So in terms of when you try to put one name, use a collective name for all your products, we talked about Godrej, we talked about Tata. When you carry a name and carry it across your product lines, that is called family branding. Procter & Gamble on the other hand uses individual brands. For Hindustan Lever, Unilever uses individual names. Very few people know that Lux and Lifebuoy come from the same house because they have such different brand images. And sometimes you have captive brands where a certain brand buys another brand and uses it as a subset of its own branding exercise. Okay, I think we are, this is the last slide that I will be talking about, because I think we are coming to the end of this session time wise. When you are trying to manage your brands, what is the task of brand management? The first task of course is creating a brand, trying to grow that brand and continuously keeping that brand relevant. Over a period of time when other competitors come in, some brands lose their relevance or lose their premium position. Think about Nokia, when there was a time in the history of mobile phone development that Nokia was one of the most prominent brands. Where is it today compared to the other brands that came in? The second task is managing continuous brand growth and brand salience, that the customers should be able to have the brand in the first 3 preferred brands that you have. So that is again a management task. How do you manage this brand salience? Again, when you try to have branding as an activity for different brands that you have, keep a specific brand strategy in the context of the competitor, because what you do is not being done in isolation. When you create certain value with your brand, the competitors react by a similar value or by a better value and so on. As the competitive realities change, you need to constantly modify your brand strategy to keep ahead of the competitor. Again, once you have the strategy, implementing that strategy, constantly reviewing it and refining the strategy. We talked about brand equity. Brand equity is the measure of the value of the brand that gets created once the brand has been in the market for some time. Now this is a monetary evaluation of the power of the brand. A very strategic task is continuously developing and enhancing your brand equity. Once you have been in the market for some time and you've had a brand strategy which is in operation, you need to constantly go back and evaluate what is my brand value today and how do I extend this value to my brand extensions, how do I rebrand. Sometimes you may want to change the brand concept. This is called repositioning, and we'll be talking about later when we are looking at marketing strategy. How do we take the difficult decision of eliminating a brand that is no longer contributing to your brand portfolio, even though you've put in investments for some time and it was good at one time? You also have to take the difficult decision of eliminating the brand. So that is all that I want to talk to you about as far as the initial exposure to brand as a concept is concerned. We will be talking about branding as a process in the next session that follows.